We've been all over. We've seen different timelines, gone back to the past. We're alone.
Here to talk Oxenfree 2, Lost Signals. I'm joined by studio director Sean Krenkel and lead writer Adam Hines from Night School Games. Welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
So, quickly set the scene for us. Where are we at the start of Oxenfree 2? What's going on? Who do we play as?
Well, you're right back in the town of Kamina. It takes place about 5 years after the first one. You play as Riley Poverly. She is an environmental researcher who was drawn back to her hometown. She's been contracted by a paranormal investigation group to investigate these weird signals that they can't really tell what it's coming from. They can't tell if it's a natural source, if it's an unnatural source, but it's affecting electronic equipment in the town. So she's been tasked to basically figure out where it's coming from.
Do you recommend people play the first Oxenfree to get the most out of the sequel, or is it pretty standalone?
It's definitely standalone as a story, but it would be awesome if you played the first one, because I think that, you know, the way we've treated it is that the world of Kamina and then Edwards Island, which is the place that's nearby that the first game took place in, the events that are taking place in Oxenfree 2 tie somewhat to what happened in Oxenfree 1. So what I mean by that is, you know, at the end of the first game, I won't spoil it too much, but I will say that things get resolved in a particular way and some portals get closed up and we feel maybe good about what happened. And at the beginning of Oxenfree 2, we realized that there is this cult-like shadowy group in Kamina that are trying to open a portal, really undoing all of the things that had been accomplished in the first game. So they tie together in that way, but otherwise we have a new protagonist, a new sort of storyline. It's almost like getting the best of an anthology approach, but having it be a shared universe.
Interesting. The original, highly influenced by teenage coming-of-age stories. Would you say that's the same for the sequel?
Sort of. So, you know, I think one thing for us this time out was that we wanted to make sure that whatever story we told and whatever, you know, trauma we were going to throw our characters through had a reason to exist. And I think in the first game, you know, we really closed out Alex's story and felt like it was pretty complete. And so in this one, we thought, okay, if the first one was a coming-of-age story for a teenager, what does coming of age look like for somebody in their 30s? And how do we do a coming of age story that grapples with generations and parenting and all of these other things that you know, could be interesting for you know, people in that age range? So it's a coming of age story for somebody in their 30s.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Are there any new gameplay mechanics you've added this time around?
One of the biggest ones that we've seen in other games before is a walkie-talkie, but the way that our walkie works is actually really unique in that you can sort of asynchronously start conversations with people that you meet around Kamina at any time. So if Oxenfree 1 was very much about being in the moment and having, you know, your dialogue bubbles popping up over you and that we're having our real-time interaction, I can bust out my radio and call somebody at any time and sort of intertwine my story with what's happening on other places in Kamina. So, you know, inspired by Metal Gear Solid, things like that, but doing it in a way that overlaps with the writing of Oxenfree, which was a giant new challenge for this guy.
Yeah, it was fun this time, allowing the player to start conversations with people at any time that they wanted. Whereas before, you could only really react to what Jonas wanted to bring up, and you could kind of guide the conversations, of course. But now players can kind of pull out the walkie-talkie at any point and just ask a question of someone that they've already met.
Speaking of all that writing, the original had several different endings. Did you have to choose one that's canon?
We
going forward? Or?
Didn't, because thankfully this world uses a lot of different timelines and a lot of different kind of multiversal properties. So we were able to kind of cheekily reference anything that the players were able to do in the first game as something that could have potentially happened for the sequel.
Could players look forward to multiple endings again this time around?
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way we like to approach it is almost like a modular grabbing of decisions and outcomes in the story so that everybody gets a custom ending. Oxenfree 1 did that, and we lean into that even more in this one because I don't want to oversell it and say like there's 8 million endings and permutations of endings, but everybody's ending will be pretty custom for them, and it's definitely we care a lot about player agency and sort of feeding back to the player that their choices matter.
Now the music in the original played a big part in setting the very cool eerie atmosphere. Can we expect sort of like a similar experience this time around?
We have been very fortunate to work with Andy Rarman, whose artist name is Scientific, and we've worked with him on all of our games. And then he joined our studio actually about a year ago full time. And so we love this aesthetic of like chill yet unsettling, something that you can kind of hang out in. And I don't know, our studio's playing a lot of Dredge right now too, which has a similar thing going on. Shout out Dredge. But yeah, I think that Andy's work on this one is incredible too. Like the vibes are awesome, and he's actually tried a lot of new orchestration. Is that the word? Orchestral approaches to the scoring.
Cool.
Yeah.
The original was very well received, but were there any criticisms that you took on and sort of implemented into the sequel?
The big one was, and I'll totally take the blame for this on the first one, is, and the whole team fought me on it, was just being able to customize the levels of certain things. I was like, no, you have to hear the sound effects at the exact same level and everything, but now you're just able to modify the experience just for usability and just where you are when you're playing it. We had just a lot of options of just being able to like slow down subtitles and just things like that. You know?
Yeah. I think another one, and this was like, not necessarily even from the public so much as a self-critique, was like, we didn't have any human antagonists really in that first one, which felt quite cool, but we're excited to have this new kind of shadowy cult figure now because we've got a real threat that feels a little bit more mortal and similar to us, and as well as treating the supernatural as like the backdrop to all of it.
Interesting. Now there have also been reports of a possible Oxenfree movie or TV series. What's the status of that project?
Yeah, it's been talked about for a hot minute now. We are, well, now that we're part of Netflix, that opens up a lot of awesome opportunities. I will say we're very early in developing what that could look like, but the versions that we've talked about in the past, those have sort of slowed down. So yes, there's a big opportunity for it, but nothing to announce yet.
Got it. We're excited to finally get to play Oxenfree 2. Don't have to wait too long. It's coming to PC and consoles later this summer on July 12th. Sean, Adam, thank you so much for joining us here on IGN Summer of Gaming.
Thank you.
Thank you.